Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam. I'm putting some final touches on something, so give me a minute.
Go ahead. I'm gonna need the same minute.
Walaikum assalam. Yes, sir.
Assalamu alaikum.
Hmm? He's already on? Let's even get up there.
She did.
It wasn't up there last week.
Yeah, she put you.
Because I didn't want him to know that we were here as a couple.
My first name is up here, so wait a minute.
I said she put my last name. As
So how do they know where it's from?
Okay.
My first name is not there.
Last week it was only my first name, and then
Okay. I'm sure she.
I don't know what's the connection to the audio. Me. John was computer audio.
Yeah.
To hear others. Okay. Okay. I don't have a speaker.
It's automatically joined by a computer when joining the meeting. That probably should have been more like it down at the bottom. Does that allow you to do that? I don't know
This is just going.
Let's see.
I was just waiting for it to stop.
Yeah, it seemed like it wouldn't take that long.
That's what I'm saying.
Click on that off thing up there. See if it will allow you to kind of go out. Can you go out all the way out? Go all the way. What's it? Okay. Click on guide and see if that thing stops at all.
I'll go all the way out. Let's open
Okay,
it.
you can you click just down here somewhere, and this will go low. Okay. What do you want to do there?
It's still there, Rashad.
Click up here. Go all the way out. Click on. Okay. You're still going. Okay. Click over here. Click here. Let's see if you can get this. Yeah. See if you can click it. Does it go? Does that go off?
Except for when I go over there, no. It shows like this. That's why.
Okay. Hit. See if you. Okay. See if you can lead a meeting.
No. Let me just do this. Sure, get started at 7 o'clock. Oh man. Won't allow me to leave either.
Can you go up to the? Can you go up there? Put it on your clip up here.
And
I'm talking
I-
about this ramp in here. Will that show up in there at all?
No, Sharon.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody.
Go ahead.
We're going to give a few more minutes for others to join us. We're going to start within 5 minutes.
I did something. Just go ahead. I don't know what that is.
Can everyone hear me?
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam. I'm just checking my sound. Can people hear me?
Yes. I hear you.
Okay. Thank you, Shukran.
Tells me I need to restart my computer. Says detects a problem. I need to restart it. I don't know if anything. I could hear her. I don't know if she can hear me.
We're going to give it a couple more minutes. About 1 more minute. You have your paper and your pencil ready. You're going to need to take notes. All right, it's 10:35, so let's begin. And so let me welcome everybody to the 4th week of Grace Lines Community Inc. Our strategies for making money grow 091. So this is the very beginning of talking about money. This is where we be a lot about the emotional side of money. So let's begin with the dua. Adam, you want to open up with the dua? Can you hear me? But if Adam, can I see Ma'am Talib just joined? Ma'am Talib, you want to open up with the dua?
Yes. Let me get myself in order here. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Maliki yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdina as-siratal mustaqim. Siratal ladina an'amta alayhim. Ghayril maghdubi alayhim waladdallin. Amen.
So again, I want to thank everybody for attending our remedial 7-week personal finance course. I'm Amira Wazir, and I'm your host for today's class. As always, I want to begin with a brief recap of past sessions. I see we have someone new with us, Mr. Duncan, Tommy Duncan, welcome. So week 1 was about intentions about money, and you were given homework. And so that homework is not something you could just do that first week. It was something that was ongoing. And if you're going to be managing money, it's going to be something that's ongoing for the rest of your life. Is actually documenting your money, determining where you're spending it, controlling it, managing it, developing a budget, sticking to it, tweaking it when necessary. All of these things are what you're going to have to do, in terms of to be in control of your money. So we had an excellent video on money trauma on our website that's just been loaded, and we haven't really gotten into trauma, but it's all about, that's why we're really dealing with the emotional aspects of money, is because we have had so much trauma around money, from slavery on to Jim Crow to institutionalized racism. It affects the way we think about money. And so also there's a Imam Fahim Shuaib's video has been loaded. It's on a recap for the first week. We're going to try to implement each week, putting everything on videos and et cetera for each week. So far we've got week 1 loaded. So if you have a chance, go and look at the video on trauma, and then making sure that you don't see Ma'am Fahim Shuaib's video. So week 2, our topic was monetizing your attitude with Brother Rashid. He gave us a perspective on the need to manage our thinking in order to manage our money. And our reading assignment was Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Week 3, Omar presented the 50-30-20 budget. Edward helped us examine our consciousness around money and fantasies with a P. So I've been thinking about that ever since he mentioned it. So we're going to get more into that hopefully at some point in time. So Edward, I didn't see the budget that Omar had presented. So is it loaded and I missed it?
No, it hasn't. Assalamu alaikum, everybody, and welcome. It has not been, hasn't been loaded yet. I need to get a loadable copy from him, but
Okay.
That's something that can be easily inserted on the website once that's done. That is part of the reason that you don't see everything from session 3 on the website yet. We're just kind of waiting on that.
Okay, so, all right, so week 3, I can say, we move on from week 3 to week 4, and we continue on with our with Edward Willis, who is our speaker for this week. And so we're going to get right into the psychology of risk, the ability to identify assets and liabilities using real applications. if we don't understand what money is, or the value of money, or the value of maybe some antiques we own, that's money. So we want to understand our money in all its forms. So I read Edward's bio twice last week, so I'm going to turn the mic over to Edward. And we'll begin with the psychology of risk.
Thank you. So the very first thing that I would like to say out of the boat is that every individual has a different risk profile. Your ability to overcome your fears, your ability to stick with a path that you've decided on in the face of peril, all these things differ from person to person. And when you start any type of financial game plan, you have to kind of get real with yourself. And I hate saying get real because that's Dr. Phil, but you have to really examine yourself and determine where you fit. If you're a really low risk person, or if you're a person who has the ability from time to time to swing for the fences, so to speak, and missing the ball and striking out would not disrupt your lifestyle, it wouldn't disrupt your psyche, then your risk profile is different than somebody that, say, hides their money in their pillow and that type thing. So you have to determine what your personal risk profile is. And then every financial decision that you make really grows from that risk profile as to what your expectations down the road can be based on how much risk that you're willing to take. So there's a saying amongst the investment community that your behavior with money is more important than how intelligent you are. And there are countless examples of people who are in janitorial roles, they're housekeepers, that, you know, they get to be 65, 70 years old and they have $2 or $3 million. And that money didn't come from going and, you know, talking to some big investment guy on Wall Street or anything like that. It was just from normal, what we would call normal saving habits of being frugal with their money, being wise with their money, making wise decisions, even on investments that for one person might be risky, but for them, they had done enough research and everything and understood what they were doing, whether that was rental property, stocks and bonds, you name it. They understood what they were doing and they stuck to their game plan in the face of everybody telling them that's crazy, or you're never going to make any money like that, or the market's up or the market's down. Their behavior with their money was consistent enough and true to themselves that at the end of that investment period that they were saving for, they had even exceeded their own expectations. So what does that mean? That means that when you start investing money, you have to be prepared to pay the price of volatility. And anybody that's lived in the United States since the mid 1980s knows what has happened in real estate time and time again, what's happened in the stock market. You're going to have ups and downs. But if you go back to, say, 1980, 85, before the 86 collapse, and you go forward and you look at the price of a house on a certain block and that house is still sitting there, you will see the upward change in value. If you went back to the same year and looked at where the stock market was at that time, and you came to today, even though we're going through a little bit of a downturn in the stock market today, you would see how much gain there has been, you know, in that 37, 38 year period of time. It's just, it's not even the same world. The money has just grown and grown and grown, and that's even with the ups and downs. So you have to be willing to go through those volatile periods to get to the so-called financial promised land. Another saying that people like to use is don't give up what you have and need for something that you don't need but would like to have. And again, that goes back to that financial mindset of understanding what's important to you personally, and having a game plan in place that, all things being equal, is going to allow you to attain that, and not then being swayed by somebody dangling something bright and shiny in your face that you may not need. You might like to have it. That new car looks fantastic. That's the new model. Oh, look at that. You don't need it. You got a 2-year-old car, and the payments are exactly where you want them to be. And the payments being there allow you to do some other things. And we'll get into that a little bit in a few minutes and show you what that looks like when you're able to kind of stick with the plan. So again, just to kind of reiterate, the first step is determining what your personal risk profile is. Once you know what your risks are and kind of where you fit, what your lane is, then you decide what your long-term, short and long-term, because we can go short-term goals, and we'll talk about that in a couple of minutes too, of some short-term goals. You can determine what it would take for you to get there. And that's the 100% plan. That's, everything's perfect. I have X number of dollars, and I put X number of dollars away over any given time period, monthly, quarterly, annually. And this is the interest rate that I know I'll get, and all those things. And this is the number of the years that I want to get it. Bang, it's right there. That's the 100% plan. There are a lot of people, and we'll talk about this too, who can't start with the 100% plan. You can start with the 60% plan. You got 60% of what you need to start toward that particular goal. And that is perfectly fine that you start there, and then you look for ways to improve your situation where you can move closer and closer to the 100% plan. And now I hope that we have been able to load. If not, if we hadn't been able to load, Adam was going to help me. He was going to try to help me load a presentation that I've been unable to load. But if not, I know he'll come back and we'll get that loaded at some point in time. If not, then I'm going to walk you through some scenarios. And I was hoping this would be up and you'd be able to visually see it, but you don't have to write all this stuff down. If you want to take notes, that's fantastic, but you don't necessarily have to take notes on this because you'll get this. So what we're looking at is a 35-year-old couple, and they make a combined $80,000 a year, and they have 2 children. They have an 8-year-old and they have a 6-year-old. And their primary goal is to be able to pay for the education of those 2 children. They don't want to do student loans. They know that there are scholarships and grants and all that stuff available, and that's fantastic. When they get to that point, if those things are available to them, they'll take full advantage of it. But their goal is to make sure that their children have a healthy home and that their children are going to be able to go to college, excuse me, for 4 years. And they're going to be able to pay for it out of their own pocket. So the model that we use, it's all based on Texas. That's where I live. It's the easiest place for me to get information. We don't have a state income tax in Texas. So when I figure taxes, income tax, Social Security, Medicare, it's really easy for me to break it down. So you take that $80,000 a year couple, and let's both of them, we're going to say both of them make the same amount of money. They both make 40 grand a year. Doesn't matter. Their tax, and this is rounded off a little bit, is $16,000. Basically 20% of their income goes to taxes, income tax, Social Security, Medicare. So their net pay is $64,000. That's $5,300 a month and change, $5,333, if you got your calculator out. So if they're then paying roughly 30% of their income, which is about the norm in the United States for housing, And that's, you know, let's say they're buying their house at this point. That's principal, interest, property taxes, et cetera. So that $1,600 of that $5,300 is gone. To the mortgage, they have an auto payment, $600 a month. They contribute 5% of their income into their 401k. So that's another $300 a month that they're putting into a 401k. So you get other things, utilities, $350, groceries and dining out, $400. This is something you can't see. I've got health insurance at $500. It's very likely that if they're on a job with a good company, their health insurance is going to be less than that. And that would give them some extra money to invest with or do other things with. But I actually plugged into the plan that they're having to pay out of pocket for health insurance, and then into a health savings account or for co-pays, $150 a month. Clothing allowance somewhere between $150 and $200. They're putting $20 a month in for charity. They go to church, masjid, you know, synagogue, whatever. They're putting away $70, $80 a month for travel expenses. That could be paying down credit cards, or it could be the money they put into a pot for family vacation. Key things: they have a mortgage and they have 2 children. And if they died today, how would that be taken care of for their children? Or if just one of them died and that income was taken away, how do they cover that loss of income, the fact that the bills continue to come in, still got to pay for college, how to do that? So I plugged in life insurance. And because of the age of their children and the timeline of their children going to college, I've chosen a 20-year level term life insurance policy, which at their age, for the both of them to have that amount, costs them between $25 and $30 a month, depending on the carrier. So they've got insurance in case something happens tragically, to be able to have the money to pay for college, and also, if they wanted to, have money to pay off their mortgage.
Edward, let me interrupt you for just a second.
Yeah.
Adam says he had, I think you were looking for a PowerPoint from him.
That is correct.
Okay, he said he has it ready, just he needs to share the screen.
Okay. You guys will pardon us for a second while we do a little housekeeping. We're there. Okay, hopefully this thing works. Adam, you may have to control this, buddy. Go to the next screen. There we are. So this is kind of what, you can't see the very top line for some weird reason, but these are the numbers that I was talking about, and we'll continue to kind of walk through this screen. So this is a 10-year period of time. So you can see that they're putting $300 a month, 5%, into their 401k. And typically 401ks are full of things like mutual funds. Today, they've given you an option of doing some exchange traded funds in there and things of that nature. There might also be some real estate investment trusts that now you can put into 401ks, but for the longest period of time, it was pretty much mutual funds. That was all you saw. Obviously, 401ks, as they accumulate money, that accumulation comes to you tax-free. So you're not paying taxes on any of that at all. Now, what I failed to talk about up there is this couple has decided to take $810 a month. You wonder, how did we get to $810 instead of $825 or something? We'll get to that. And put that aside in both investment funds and a 529 plan. And anybody with children in the last 20 years knows about the 529 plan, that you can put away money. It grows for your kids' education. You know, when you start taking it out, I mean, the tax situation is more favorable to you. There's a lot of different reasons to use a 529 plan. all 529 plans are not 100% expansive, like you can't put any kind of investment in them. There are some limitations, but it's pretty broad as to what you can choose to put into a 529 plan. So anyway, I used for the 401k, for those of you guys that have a financial calculator and like to play around, I use a 6% return on investment for the 401k. And I also did no match and no employer match at all. So the employer is not contributing any money. This is all their money going into 401k. If you had an employer match on this, up to 5% or even 3%, it dramatically changes what those numbers look like. So at the end of 10 years, you're looking at them contributing. This is only at $300 a month. $300 a month into a 401k. They're over $49,000. $810 a month into their investment plan, midterm investment plan with the 529, they're over $133,000 a month. And they also found the time, and that number is wrong, investments, it should be 50 instead of 100. I didn't change it because I did apply some more money to the emergency fund for education and other things. That number should be 50, but $50 a month contribution, they're over $10,000 after 10 years. And into that particular fund, they started with $500. They opened the account with $500 and then put $50 a month in. So that's what you're looking at after a 10-year period of time. So risk-wise, they have really used life insurance as their risk abatement to be able to guarantee that within that time period, that 20-year time period, they'd be able to pay off a mortgage and they'd be able to pay off their children's education if something happened to either one of them, that they'd have the money available to do that. So that's their way of saying, okay, let's take as much risk out of this as possible. And the other thing they do is the specific goals they had, which is like, we're buying a house. We want to be able to pay off the house, in a catastrophic situation, death. And of course, we're assuming that both of them stay employed this entire period of time. There's not any lengthy unemployment or anything like that, or lengthy disability. And, some of the insurance I talked about here may be long-term disability insurance. I really didn't want to get into that, but that's another possibility. And there are reasons. That's another, you are 3 times more likely in your working lifetime to become disabled as to die. Disability insurance is as important, if not more important, than life insurance. And we can talk about, when we have a discussion, we can talk about some ways to maximize disability insurance so it doesn't cost you an arm and a leg. So that's where we are at the end of that 10-year period. And now this couple is 45 years old. And Adam, we can move to the next slide now. They're now 45 years old and they're good at their work. So their income has grown, not by a lot, but it's grown. They're making $10,000 more a year than they were when they were 35. They now have an 18-year-old and a 16-year-old. Their 18-year-old is a freshman in college. 16-year-old is a junior in high school. We'll go through the same kind of numbers. They live in Houston. Their taxes are $19,000 a year. Gives them $71,000 worth of spending money, a little over $5,900 a month. Either they have made some additions to their home or they've moved up to a better place. They're now paying $1,800 a month, for the house that they live in. They probably looks like they've upgraded their car. They have a $700 payment, including insurance and all that good stuff. or they're spending $700 for transportation, a little bit more than what they were before. They have upped their 401k contribution at $375 a month as their income has grown. Somehow their utilities have stayed the same. These are frugal people. Their emergency fund has grown from being $810 a month to $850 a month that they're putting aside. So they probably sat down and made some adjustments and said, we didn't get 8% last year. Maybe we only got 5.5% or 6% on that money. We need to put a little bit more money in to reach our goal, whatever reason. They have done that. Insurance has gone up a little bit. Everything else has pretty much stayed the same. Of course, they do have the 20-year life insurance policy, those premiums, because it's level term, level premium, that hasn't grown. But look at what's happened to the money that they put aside. If you remember, after the end of 10 years, they had a little over $49,000 in the 401k. And they're still only putting 5% of their gross income aside in 401k, but they're almost at $150,000 now. Their emergency fund or college fund or whatever you want to call it has only grown from at the end of 10 years, because now we're looking at the end of the 20-year period down there. So in the next 10 years, it's only grown from 133,000 to 188,000. And you're asking why? Well, they were sucking money out of there to pay for college. They were writing checks. So starting when the youngest son was 18 years old, they were taking a little bit more than $20,000 out of the 529 plan, investment plan, however you want to call it. And they were writing a check to pay for his tuition, room, and board at University of North Texas, which I use as a model because they're not super expensive. They're not like University of Texas, but they run the norm for a medium-sized university in the state of Texas. About $20,000 a year for those things that I named. So year one and year two, they're writing $20,000 checks out of those accounts to pay for their oldest child's first 2 years of college. Well, come along year three, now they have 2 children in college. So, and I'm hoping that the cost hasn't gone up, but anyway, so it's $20,000. So now they're paying $40,000 a year. So for 2 years in that period of time, they're paying $40,000 a year out of this particular fund to pay for their 2 children's education. And then after that last 2 years, it's down to $20,000 again, just for the younger child. So they've sucked some money out of that account. So there's not as much money in their compounding at the 8%. So that accounts for the lack of growth in that account, but they're accomplishing what they set out to accomplish, which was to pay for their children's education out of their own pocket and also have an emergency fund in case something happened, even outside of having to use life insurance or maybe a disability or something. They had cash on hand that they could use for emergency situations. The small little account where they're putting like $50 a month in has now grown to a little over $30,000, almost $31,000. And if you're really going to put a pencil to this, don't get mad at me that I didn't do the whole tax thing, because you're going to pay taxes on some of this. It's not all just going to run up and accumulate and all those things, and you're not going to have some taxes. So these are raw numbers. But at some point in time, you're going to pay the government for making all that money. You're going to have some taxes come out, and hopefully it's long-term capital gains tax, which is 15%. So it's not going to hurt you real bad, but you are going to pay taxes at some point. So let's spring forward. So they're 55 now. Prime earning years. You can say 45 to 60, prime earning years. They should be at the top of their game. They're probably managers, department managers, if not VPs or above, wherever they work. They're managers probably. And their income has grown to $120,000 a year. Plus they're empty nesters. They paid for 2 children to go to college. They've maintained their health. They're both still working. And they're making, which in the United States of America is a moderate for 2-income family, $120,000 a year. They're not rich by any means, but they're reasonably comfortable. They haven't had any major bumps in the road, no illnesses, that type of thing. So $120,000 a year, they're paying $29,000 a year in tax, net pay of $91,000, almost $7,600 a month. Whether they upsize or downsize, housing costs more these days. So they're paying $2,500 a month mortgage for wherever they live. Their auto payments are down to $300, which probably tells me that they've got 1 car that's paid for. And at $300 a month, they got really smart and they're leasing the second vehicle because they don't take the second vehicle on long trips. It's probably just to work at home or run a few errands. So they're not going over their $12,000 or $15,000 a year, miles a year, I'm sorry, and incurring any other charges on that lease car. So they're paying $300 a month for a fairly decent lease car, and they've got a car that's paid off. They're still doing the 5% on their 401k, putting in $500 a month. Utilities hadn't gone up much. I don't know how that's happening, but it hasn't. They're still saving or investing or whatever you want to call it, $850 a month into midterm savings. You know, their grocery bill hasn't gone up. They got 2 kids out of the house, probably shouldn't. Health insurance has gotten a little higher. And again, you know, they're probably that $1,200 probably would be partially covered by an employer. And Adam, you do need to move to the next screen. I'm sorry. I moved ahead of you without, there you go. All right. That $1,200 a month that they're at 55 that they're now paying for health insurance might be a little high because their employer probably covers a good bit of that. It's the next one, Adam. Go to 55, should be 55. There we go. That's it. So their employer should probably cover most of that. But again, those are costs. And I did factor those in. Just think if the employer's even paying half of that, then that's another $600 that they have to put in some type of investment. So the medical copays, all that stuff has kind of remained the same. They still have their little ETF fund account where they're putting $50 a month in. They probably forgot it's even there. They don't even look at it. They get the thing, they file it on the taxes, whatever, but they don't change it. Life insurance, there's 3 question marks there. Do they simply take the group life insurance that they get at work, which probably matches, you know, if they get $60,000 a year, chances are they get $60,000 in group life insurance that their employer gives them. Now, sometimes, depending on the insurance company that the employer has, you know, there's limits. It might be 50,000, whatever, for you, no matter what. But a lot of times, you can take the base, which is $1,000 of insurance for every $1,000 that you earn on the job, and then you can buy additional group life insurance for basically the change you have in your pocket. Another 10,000, another 20,000 for the change you carry in your pocket. One of the most inexpensive way to have life insurance is through your employer, if they have a good group plan. And nobody should ever pass that up. It's like they almost give it to you for free. So we left that as a question mark, and we'll get to that in a second as to why I did that there. So given that they're no life insurance, but their money, and I've expanded this out to age 65. Because in the graphic above, when they were into the 45-year period, we saw where they were. So let's carry this forward to age 65 so we can get out of here. Their 401k at age 65, just going along and plugging in 5% of their gross salary. At age 65, they've got over $280,000 in a 401k. Money they've never had to touch. In the 20 years since their children are out of college and that they've continued to contribute over $800 a month into their own investment plan, they're at like $560,000 in that plan. If you remember, after they paid for college, they were down to it was at 188. So give that 20 more years, and they're roughly $560,000 in that account. And their little account, the $50 a month account that they started with $500, is now over $75,000. So you add those numbers up, and they're over $900,000 in liquid assets. And they paid for 2 college educations. And they've done this within, now agreed, there's no big emergency situations have happened here. So this is almost ideal, right? No deaths, no disabilities, no long-term unemployment, any of that stuff. So this is almost ideal. But following that plan, abrogating, taking away as much risk as they possibly can with insurance, both health insurance and life insurance, being somewhat frugal. I mean, they still put money away for travel. They still give to charity. I mean, they still kind of go out to eat and stuff like that. And the health insurance money that is in here, I mean, if their employer is covering health insurance or majority of health insurance, that money could have been used for something too. So it's not like they're living in a cave and they're not enjoying life at all. There's some life enjoyment going on here, right? Plus the fact that they're able to pay for their kids' education, which I'm sure they're happy about. So anyway, in that particular model, there's no insurance. So let's go to the final slide. And we have now injected, that was it, Adam. We've now said, well, hey, we're still in good health. And we have this bigger house now. Well, if something does happen to you. So they decide to buy some life insurance. So they join AARP and they take the New York Life product at $150,000 of insurance each for them. And over the next, I think I ran this for 15 years, if I'm not mistaken, out to age 80, 65 to 80. And I did an average because I didn't want to do line by line. So over that time period, based on New York Life's current premium chart, certain amount for a woman, certain amount for a man for that time period, $150,000 each, they would average spending $650 a month. Because it goes up, it's 5-year bands. Every 5 years, the premium kicks up. So they would average spending $650 a month, which would take money away from that emergency fund. So you can see up there where the emergency fund at that point is down to $200 a month. Because they've taken money away from that to pay for insurance. So in that model, their 401ks not affected at all. It's exactly the same, pretty much the same as what it was if they were paying for insurance. But their emergency fund, that number has dropped from 560,000 to a little over 450,000. So they've lost, just from paying for insurance, they have lost roughly $200,000. So that's where the question comes in as to whether you take the money that you have, that 800 and plus number of dollars that you're putting away every month, and you put that toward insurance, or you keep that money working in the investment account. Because realistically, if you both do live to 80, the numbers don't differ that much as to the accumulation of funds or the funds that are available. So if the husband died, there's $150,000. If he dies at age 80, there's $150,000 check written. If you don't pay for the both of them having a premium, there's $200,000 potentially more in the investment account. So a $50,000 surplus. But along that time continuum, there's no surety that one or both of them don't pass away, have a disability, all these things. So once again, this is where your knowledge of self and a lot of things go into this: family history, illnesses that you've had, you know, how you actually feel about your health future, things of that nature go into determining whether or not you would rather say, hey, look, we're sitting pretty in that investment account. Let's make sure that if something happens to me, you've got $150,000 coming from life insurance. And she says the same thing to him. And they go buy the life insurance, and instead of having $650,000, they have $450,000 and the surety of life insurance, right? Once again, that's risk abatement. Now, there are people that I know who are relatively wealthy people who don't have the life insurance. They've got the cash in hand, and they have gone and they paid for the burial site, and they paid, you know, for whatever is going to happen with their body, the casket and all these different things. And they've already made decisions on where money goes. You know, when I die, y'all take X number of dollars and do this. And X number of dollars goes to John, and X number of dollars goes to Amira, and so on and so forth. They've already made these decisions, and the money's there. And in many cases, even with their investment account, they have gone and they've moved money into safer vehicles. So there's less chance of loss. They may have taken, you know, $400,000 of that money and moved it into an annuity. An annuity is protected from lawsuits, an annuity is protected from invasion by the government for tax purposes, you know, all these different things. So there's lots of different options to get into. And in the coming weeks, we're going to have an opportunity to really do a deep dive into all different kinds of investments and the risk profile of those investments. In fact, I think we're going to have a gentleman next week who is a true licensed investment advisor of the highest order, and we're going to have a chance to talk about that. So I'm only kind of glossing over it because I don't want you guys to think that we're giving you the highest level of financial knowledge here. We're kind of painting the picture for you, right? The outline of the picture, and we're going to, over a period of time, all of this is going to be filled in. But we want you thinking about these types of decisions, and also just being able to sit down and do the basic kind of planning that in 20 years, if I want to have an investment account that's worth $250,000 and I expect it to be 6% interest, you know, some kind of historical numbers, what I'll get starting today, how much money do I have to put aside to do that? I've got a couple of children that I want to get into college. What kind of money do I have to put aside, starting now, to make sure that worst comes to worst and I have to pay for their education, that I've got the money to do that, or I've got 50% of the money to do it. Remember we talked about there's a 100% plan and then there's where you are, which might be 50, might be 60, might be 40, might be 70 of where you are to get being able to get there. And then if you're working with a truly good financial advisor, and you're sitting down with them at minimum once a year, probably twice a year is better, especially if you're young, and you're making adjustments to your plan to keep you on track to reaching your goals. And all along that, you're assessing yourself. And your risk profile, as you become more comfortable, just like when you learn to ride a bike, it was long before you were able to pop wheelies, right? You just didn't feel like you had enough control of that situation to pop wheelies or go up on your front wheel and all that kind of stuff. But as you grew more comfortable and more knowledgeable, you were able to do that. It's the same thing when you're working. Is that as you grow your knowledge base, you're going to be able to know yourself better and change your decision-making process based on your knowledge base. And that's primary knowledge of self. And with that, I am done. You're still muted, Sister Mira.
Thank you so much. We appreciate that. Look, it kind of gives a vision of what's possible if we do manage our money and not waste our money, that we can begin to look forward to having a nice retirement. I always say the golden years aren't gold without gold, they aren't golden without gold. So but you gave a sort of a visionary look at it, what's possible with budgeting and sticking with it. So I'm going to open the floor up to questions. Any questions or comments about what Brother Edward went over?
Assalamu alaikum. One of the things I want to stress to all of us is that that was an example, and it was an excellent example. And I think one of the first things that Edward said that I want us also to keep in mind is that each one of us have different approaches to our risk factors. Because as I was sort of following the bouncing ball that he was putting forth, one of the things that I paid close attention to was what they were continuing to pay in mortgage. And the assumption on my part being that if they started out at 25, if they just paid what was due, by the time they got 55, there would be no more mortgage, because now that 30 years is over and you've got that little bit of extra to work with. And if you are like some of us who if for no other reason, we like to pretend to be savvy, and we add a little bit extra in principal each month to help pay that down even faster, again, you then have a little bit more cushion to be able to play with. I think what we need to come to grips with is when you get that little bit of extra to play with, don't play with things that are not going to benefit you, like going out and spending $500 on a pair of sneakers. you know, or something that really is not going to have any future value, you know, to you. I found the examples that he was giving to be more helpful, and I would encourage people to look at those again in your own situation and see where you might be able to increase your investments in some places, decrease it in others, and still be able to meet your goals. And I'm saying to us that what was presented works, because my son got a world-class education. I mean, literally a world-class education, where we are debt-free. He's not carrying any education debt, and neither is his parents. So that it works. And whether you can tell it or not, I'm 70 years old. So I'm right up there in that higher grouping that Edward was showing at the end. So that's my comment.
Thank you, Ma'am Talib. One of the things I've thought about, and we want the audience to chime in here. So we're just kind of throwing some things out here to stir your mind, because I know you got to have some questions. And so as I noticed in the example that Edward presented, you didn't see a lot of debt, credit card payments and things of that nature. So this was a couple that was practicing, and we talked about this briefly, delayed gratification. We're not going to go out and run up a bunch of debt because we have a 20-year plan, a 30-year plan. And so at the end of that 30-year plan, we're going to be debt-free. We're going to be able to do the things that we want to do. We have money left to do, to travel, to do all these things. But they had to plan that they were not going to waste the money, that they were going to save the money. So that's an example of delayed gratification. I'm going to sacrifice my desire today to make a purchase, but my desire once I reach my retirement age is to, you know, to be golden, living life like it's golden. So, and then, as Edward pointed out, they had comfort. They didn't have to give up everything. So it's not all about spending, and our attitude about how we spend our money has to change from spending to saving, to managing, to investing and growing the money. So if we have that attitude that we're going to spend wisely and grow the money, then we can, that was an example of what you can see. And I'm sure it may be the first time any of you have ever seen a life plan such as that. And so depending on where you are in your life journey, you know, you may be at the beginning, you may be in the middle, or you may be toward retirement and looking at other types of expenses. You know, the children's college is behind you, the house is already paid for. But it gives you an understanding of the process so that you can share it with your children, your grandchildren, and anyone else, you know, that you may want to spend some time with just to teach them some financial literacy points. But I have this question, and I'm going to take this moment as you all continue to think, to ask this question about, I asked it in the very first meeting about your needs. And many of you indicated that you were interested in final wishes, you know, that wills and trusts. So is there someone here that are listening today where getting out of debt and frugal living is something that you're interested in? Let me just, can you just show a hand or put it in the comment section, but give us some idea about where you are on this monetary path we call life. Anybody interested in getting out of debt? So what are your interests other than, because Mr. Duncan is, if I'm not mistaken, is new. So we haven't had an opportunity to speak with you. And so kind of just introduce yourself and what your goals are for the class. What are your needs?
Good morning. This is Tommy
Good
Duncan.
morning.
was actually invited by Mr. Willis, and I am here to support and to learn as much as possible in terms of the financial education. I have a great deal of respect for Mr. Willis and the work that he does. We've known each other for a few years, and so I am here to support and I am here to learn.
Well, you all kind of look like brothers.
Well, long as we don't start acting like brothers. Me and my brother used to fight all the time, so I don't have time.
We don't have a problem with that. So,
But no, Tommy and I have worked on these financial things for some time and had a lot of conversations. And actually, Tommy has his own program that I am sometimes very fortunate to be a guest on. We have an audience much like this, and we talk about these particular issues quite a bit, different areas, real estate, stocks, different types of investments, and really kind of get down in them and try to understand them extremely well. I mean, I'm appreciative of that. And I'm appreciative of him being here today.
Well, we're grateful to have you, Mr. I'm not going to call you Mr. Duncan. I'm going to call you Tommy. So, and then jump in, you know, you have all this expertise, so feel free to share it with us. We welcome your voice. And so someone else I don't think we've met, and I'm gonna have to, she's still connecting. Brother Najib, we spoke with you already. We have an understanding of where your needs are, correct?
Yes, I was just agreeing. I wanted to get out of debt.
You were agreeing on what? I'm sorry.
On wanting to get out of debt. When
He
you
wants to get out of debt.
Yeah, I was
Okay.
agreeing with that. Yeah.
Okay, so that's the goal of yours, getting out of debt. I kind of wanted to know, I'm still in the process of putting together a money tracker, which is a tool that I use to get out of debt with. And so I kind of want to understand the audience need for that. And so Kareem.
Yes, salam alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. I came in on kind of late on California time, trying to get some rest. Things have been busy at the job, and then CWSC events coming up. So just kind of been chasing myself here a lot. But it's actually the first time I think I've really seen it kind of a life plan, or at least really begin to, really pay close attention to it. But when I saw this, I really had wished that, I could have invited some of my younger relatives or have some younger ones in on this too. But again, like I say, I'm kind of way on down the line in all of this, but thank Allah that He blessed me to be able to stay well and be able to continue to do a little work and consulting, whatever I need to do to be able to, meet my needs. So that's truly a blessing. But just looking at it, I can know that at the point where it was kind of way up there, but it kind of still kind of trickles down and catches up with you, your errors, that you make. But kind of early on coming in on just establishing nonprofit organizations and wanting to kind of really help and serve and all of that. And you don't look out for yourself sufficiently. So I can see an error there for us, since I've been doing non-for-profits for years. Youth home, I had children's homes, non-public schools. So I've done a lot of work and put a lot into that. But, Allah rewards you back with that. So, that kept me well here. But again, I'm just saying full planning and kind of having a plan so you know where you're going, not just kind of end up someplace financially, but I've worked a long time, and so blessed to have some retirement, put some of that again in non-organizations too, though. So lost some that way in that respect. But again, like I say, Allah's been kind and kept me afloat and always have my needs met. So,
Right.
but again, I think this is very valuable. I saw a couple things that even at this point that I still would be able to maybe kind of look at and close. But one thing is important, that I don't have a lot of debt. So that's good. I don't.
Well, Dr.
have
Kareem,
anything major.
before we recognize Rashad, I want to leave you with something that Nelson Mandela said.
Yes,
which
sir.
is, I never lose. I either win or learn.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah.
Yeah, so keep that in mind.
Yes,
He said he never lost.
that's right.
He either won or he learned.
That's right. That's right. I learned. I learned. Yeah.
As we
All of it's been for good reason. It's paid me back over and over again in different ways, but I still learned. I learned, that you need a lot of time to have a little bit more knowledge. Can't always do just everything from the heart, Yeah. So, but alhamdulillah, I will keep that in mind, and that's comforting.
that was the point.
Alhamdulillah. Thank you so much, Dr. Aisha. But I wanted to just throw in one point before we get to Brother Rashad as well. I'm gonna make it real quick. So when we got to the end of the plan and we could see the gross amount, this was a time to ask yourself, how long will my money last? I've got probably $900,000, and so my lifestyle is $25,000 a year. How long will my money last? Will you outlive your money, or will your money, be there till the end? So that's the thing we'll have to do when we get to a certain point with our retirement savings, is we have to apply our that money management skills we had and just figure out, how long will my money last? That has to figure in the plan too. Brother Rashad, that's not it.
Well, look, my salam. I had a comment when I was in the corporate world. It was voluntary to join the retirement system. And there were a couple of my coworkers that did not join when they became eligible. Like I said, it was voluntary. And the reason they indicated they weren't joining because they didn't think they would be there very long. To fast forward, they were there longer than they expected. And they couldn't afford to join because they had to go back but I don't know what the term is called, but I think you have to go back and buy the years. And they paid a heavy price for that. One was doing very poorly because they ended up being laid off and didn't have any retirement. They were there for quite a while. The other one was still working. So I'm saying this to those that are in the corporate world, that whatever's on the table that your employer is offering you in terms of insurance, and Brother Willis pointed it out, take full advantage. Don't leave money on the table. There are things that you can invest in on the job. One incident, I found out that you can voluntarily save money, called a deferred comp program. And the advisor said, you can have this money taken out and your paycheck will increase. And I thought that was crazy. How do you take money out and your paycheck will increase? He said, well, it's about taxes. They don't take taxes.
Mhm.
So I said, well, let me give that a try. And then sure enough, my paycheck went up. But a lot of people would not take advantage of those situations. So that's all I had to say. But if your employer is offering these things, insurance or savings for whatever it is, and they matching, don't ignore those things because time goes by real fast, and certainly you're going to regret it. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam. Thank you for that, because we don't understand the investment vehicles that are presented to us when we first go to work. When I first started AT&T, they were offering stock. I'd never heard of stock. What is it? Why do I need to buy stock? I didn't see the need. I'm not buying any AT&T stock. Well, actually, it was Ohio Bell, and eventually it became AT&T. But I couldn't understand what stock was all about. I understood bonds, and I bought bonds, but I couldn't understand stock. Well, I could have, but so it's important, even if you don't thoroughly understand, to investigate. But there was also one point I want to make in terms of investing, and we're talking about investing. There's no way you should be investing if you've got credit card debt. You need to pay down that credit card debt, and your credit card debt, let's just say it's 15%, and you invest your money and the return on it is 10%. That's not a good, that's not good. You invest once you have gotten rid of all these high interest credit cards, and then you begin to put your money someplace that is going to pay you better than just sitting in a savings account. But all day, every day, we hear about, Wall Street, Dow Jones, et cetera, et cetera. And so the word invest in cryptocurrency, and it's like a wave is pushing against us. But the first thing we have to understand is we invest once we're debt free. Or now, if you just got $20 left in debt and now you're ready to start investments, that's a different thing. But if you've got credit card debt, you need to pay it down. You can't, it doesn't make sense. The reason that we are investing is to make the money grow. It's not going to grow if we're getting a negative return on it.
Assalamu alaikum. Can I say a little bit? I just have to say
Assalam, Brother Rashid.
it's a couple of things that, I enjoyed the presentation. Two things. I just want to comment on Dr. Aisha was saying. She said she wish she had some other people who will be on the line. Well, that's the important thing. We talk about building family life. That includes your sisters, brothers, children, uncles, nieces, and aunts. So, Sister Aisha, I would ask you to please let them know what you experience and how it could benefit them as well. The second thing I want to say is that I have a sticker on my credit cards, and it says, "Debt is detrimental to your wealth," on each one of my credit cards. So whenever I use this thing, I know, I got to see this. I got to see this little sticker on my card. Debt is detrimental to your wealth. And the beautiful part about it is, in the first four letters of detrimental is the word debt. So I couldn't agree with you more on getting out of debt before you try to invest. And the most important thing is investing into yourself. And what we're doing here, as Brother Edward so eloquently displayed to us, that you first of all have to invest into yourself. That means getting your mind ready to go. Your personal life plan, which includes your personal financial plan. So if you don't have a life plan that you look at or 10, 20, 30 years down the road, like most people do, then quite frankly, your financial plan would be diminished by that. So I just want to make that particular point known. And thank you, Tyler, for I never lose. I learned. And that was so essential, So I'm big on developing your own personal life plan, not just for myself, but once we know, there's our duty and obligation to share with our children, to share with our nieces, nephews, and uncles and aunts, because we live in a world that is so screwed up. If you don't understand the interworkings of that, so by not having a personal life plan, you would never understand the interworkings of what goes on in your surroundings, in your financial life, in your economic life, and your political and social life. So it is so important that we develop our own personal life plan. Sit down at the table, look at yourself, analyze your assets and liabilities, analyze your income. What is that income circle? What can you do with that income circle? All you make is what you make. You can't make yourself make any more than what you make. So if it means exposing yourself to additional income opportunities, home-based businesses, and like my brother was saying about what's happening on the job, those opportunities that come to you, that is so important. We have to, if we intend to exist or continue in this economic world, we have to know where we are and we have to have a plan. I just wanted to say that. Thank you so much.
So, thank you, Brother Rashid. One of
Can
the
I,
things.
can I interject something real quick?
Yes, sir.
There's a couple of things that if you have means, and that's an important statement. If you have means, I mean, if you're living paycheck to paycheck, debt or no debt,
That's the need.
then your options are limited as to what you can do. But if you have means and you have the ability and flexibility to make financial decisions, one of the very first things that you need to do after you write down what your goals are, attainable or not, write down what your goals are, what you want, is to go and sit down with a licensed financial professional, preferably somebody that has the initials AIF behind their name. That's an accredited investment fiduciary. And the most important word there is fiduciary. Counselor, insurance agent, bank rep, all that stuff. I mean, that's great and they mean well, but a fiduciary who is accredited is like a trust officer at a bank, only at a higher level. Their money is your money. And what I mean by that is their entire professional reputation, their ability to do business, their ability to even have their own finances is based on the fact that they make the best decisions for you over and above whether or not they get paid, make any money on what you're doing, anything like that. And when you sit down with them, and this is whether you have a lot of debt or not, run at least 3 different scenarios of reaching your goal. And like Sister Amir said and Rashid seconded, that may include paying down or paying off all your credit card debt or most of it before you ever invest a dime. And then again, it may not. It may, depending again on who you are, what your risk tolerance is, it may be doing both at the same time. Because you may be able to walk into a scenario where you get a 50% or 60% return on investment, short term, on some investment opportunities over and above the 22 or 23% you're paying on your credit card. But in any case, when you invest and you invest properly, you're going to make money. Again, it all depends on whether or not you have the means. If you got an extra $300, $400, $500 a month, and you got credit card debt, definitely some or all of that should go toward paying your credit card debt off, because those interest rates are going to be high. But if you can see your way clear to start making money with your money, while at the same time you're winding that down, and the scenario that you run, and these financial scenarios, the tools that they have these days are fantastic. They can very possibly show you a way where there's a meet in the middle 5 years, 7 years down the road, where the next month you're making more money than what your debt is, and your debt's steadily falling. So there are different scenarios, and there's, like my father used to say, there's different ways to skin that cat. So you want to look at multiple scenarios of getting to where you want to go. And to Sister Aisha, age doesn't matter, Dr. Aisha.
I know, that's why I'm online.
Age does not matter.
Yeah.
You have X number of dollars, you got money in the bank, you got money set aside over here and you're still making money.
Uh-huh.
How much of your money is making money and how much is it making?
Mhm.
Because if you can go take part of your money and put it into investments that pay dividends
Okay.
every year, every month, however you want to do it, even investing in rental properties that somebody else manages that pays you more money than what you're getting by your money sitting in another account, you can increase your income simply by a signature and a transfer. There are multiple options that are open to you without really and truly putting your money at risk. They're out there.
Okay.
Thank you. So we have a.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, the hand, we see your hand raised. It's the
That
469.
is Sister Hope Hart.
Oh, okay. Sister Hope, your hand is raised.
Need to take yourself off mute. Hope, you need to take yourself off mute.
There she go.
All right. Greetings, Sister Hope. You had a question?
Let's hope her audio is working.
While we're waiting for her to get situated here, one of those things that I've thought about, and my daughter made mention of this when she worked for.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we
Yes.
can hear you now.
Hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. Good morning.
Good
I'm
morning.
sorry. Go ahead, Sister Mary.
No, we were waiting on you.
Okay. I couldn't figure out how to unmute. Okay, Salaam alaikum. Good morning. I wanted Brother Khalid or Edward to go through the scenario somewhat with a single parent. I mean, since 75% of Black children are born to single parent households, I mean, we have a lower marriage rate in America of Black people. The norm would be a single person, a 35, trying to accumulate wealth. So I was saying, how would you change that scenario for a single person, male or female, single parent, making $50,000 a year? What key things might be different? And also, looking at not necessarily looking at having a nest egg, as much money in retirement. I mean, I guess, they would be more in survival mode or having money to survive when they're over 60. Would there be some key changes that, that a single parent or a single person would have? I mean, not just single parent. There are many middle-aged, single Black females. I mean, it's a high amount. How would it be different?
It wouldn't be that much different. So you could take any of the models that I threw up there and you could say that's a one-parent household. You keep the dollar amounts the same and really and truly the numbers don't change very much. In fact, you're probably paying less for insurance because you're only insuring one person as opposed to two. So you have more available funds to work with in many cases. So the tax situation may change a little bit as far as the amount of money, refunds and things like that you get from the government, how much you're taxed, because that type of thing.
But
obviously
your income is half.
When you
Income is half.
Yes.
But your household, your household expenses are the same. You're only making $50,000 a year.
Not necessarily.
And your household expenses.
No.
Okay.
No. right? So you weren't here at the beginning when I set the table. So
Yes, I did. I was here the whole time. But
Okay,
I'm
so-
saying your
oh,
cost for your housing is
very
going to be the
first-
same. Cost for your car is going to be the same. Utilities.
No, to all that. Everything is based on what your long-term goals are. Even how much you're willing to pay for a car. New car versus 5-year-old car. Everything changes. This is the thing, is that you're not living somebody else's life. You're living your life. So if it's a one-parent household, there are 2 children in the household, and the household income is $40,000 instead of $80,000, the expense that you're able to put out, given that you're in a city that allows you to do it, that you're only paying 30% for housing, 30% of your income for housing, then that housing allowance is reduced. Given if your goal is to save enough money to be able to pay out of pocket for your children's education, then, and you have 2 children, that would take a large lump out of what your take-home income is. In fact, you probably wouldn't be able to do it. You wouldn't be able to make the same contribution as a person, the couple that was making $80,000. So
Correct.
you would be one of those situations where there's 100% plan and you're at 50%. So in ideal situation, you're only going to be able to get to the 50% unless something changes. And that's, as I said before, that's a very real situation for a lot of people. So that particular family at age 35, looking down the road, is probably saying, I hope they have student loans available. I hope we can get Pell Grants. I hope we can do this. I hope we can do that to be able to pay for my children's education. Because I can see right now with the money I have to set aside that I probably only going to be able to pay for 50% of that at best.
Correct.
Right? So that's where you are. So putting it down, and all we're talking about today, remember, everything I presented is an ideal situation. So if you're at 50% of that, that's not defeat. In fact, if you got 50% of the income and you're still doing the planning that the 80,000 people did, and you're contributing your amount, that's victory. If you're able to stick with that plan. That is an actual accomplishment, right? Because you planned it, you've been realistic with yourself, you understood the risk, all of these things, and you put your plan in action to get to the 50%, and you're going to stick to it. Now, what you have to do past that point is that you have to work with yourself. I don't know if you improve your education, you improve your job, whatever the case may be, you have a side hustle. I mean, anything that you can do to get closer to the 100. And maybe with all your striving, you never get past 60. That's a victory. That's fantastic. And you should get high fives from everybody for doing it.
There's 2 things I would also recommend to you, Hope, and that would be, I don't know if it's available just yet, but go back, and I don't recall whether you were present, but go back and listen to Rashid's presentation on monetizing your attitude. And the second thing that I would recommend that you do is, as you're going through this process that Edward was just talking about, involve your children. And this is to any single parent. Involve your children in your decision-making process so that you all have someone to bounce this off of. Because what a single parent what a single parent may be going through is going to be, could possibly be mirrored, and your children would gain value from you all sitting down and having these discussions. You know, because I
Mhm.
came up in a household that my parents didn't discuss with me bills and investments. And, you know, there's a lot of people out there that think that as long as you got checks in your checkbook, you've got to have money in the bank. You know, so it's and I can encourage all of us, whether you're a single parent or whether you have long been married, sit down and have these discussions with your children. And you're going to see, you know, particularly in this world, how they're able to explore and contribute to the conversation, because they're a little bit more technology savvy than we are. Or at least, no, let me change that. They're a little bit more technology savvy than I am. So though that would be my contribution to you and others.
Thank you, Brother Tyler.
Well, I mean, my
sorry.
children have to be involved in money, because sometimes we don't have enough money for their band uniform or things like that. They have to be involved, because when you're a single parent, I mean, with a lower income, I mean, you can't have everything that you want. So, I mean, they have to be involved in money. They have to know that the more you leave a light on, the higher the electricity bill will be, and all those types of things. So, I mean, it's not oblivious, but I'm not talking about just me, because really, for a 35-year-old, statistically in the Black community, it would be more likely that the person would be a single household as opposed to a two-person household. If you look at the statistics of the marriage rates, the only reason why our marriage rates look as high as they do is because of baby boomers. Baby boomers are, married more than, the younger people. So really, the single parent, I mean, and as many single Black women as they are, and that's what the whole Kevin Samuels, trending was about educated single women over 40, so statistically, the single scenario is just as important in the Black community as a two-parent. I mean, married couple. I mean, it should be looked at equally in our community.
Right. Right.
That's good.
And all I'm suggesting to you, again, is I'm going to add this to it. Besides going back and listening to Rashid's presentation on monetizing your attitude, I would also suggest to all of us, not just to Hope, but when you listen to these so-called experts, do they present a solution to the problem? Because we know what the problem is. I know the struggles of a single person, not a single parent, but I know the struggles of a single person because I've been one. And one of the things that has helped me in that process was to be able to find and keep a mate. Now I have something to bounce it off of. But what we need is not more examples of the problem. We know what the problem is. We've heard enough stories about single parent households. What we need now are people that are going to present solutions. Rashid has a solution. Omar had a solution with his 50-30-20. What Edward has presented to us about the psychology of risk and all of the different things, the tools that we either use or don't use to help our situation. I just don't want to see our people keep having this sort of doom and gloom without providing them with some light at the end of the tunnel. And that's what Graceline is here for. We are the seed planters. We're the ones that going to give you these tools that you're going to need and then be able to turn that over and get what it is that you need so that you will start to experience this growth.
Thank you, ma'am, Talib. And we're going to end there. It's a little past 12. And in keeping with respecting everyone's schedule, let's have the closing dua, and we could continue. Those of you who want to continue and stay with us, please, we welcome you to do so. And I got a couple questions and comments, one for Brother Najib. So, could we have a closing dua?
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر الحمد لله رب العالمين.
Before you get started, let me say this. I think the point that Hope was making, and quite a few people on the line today, we have to recognize where we live, the economic structure of our living here. But more importantly, that self-responsibility is something that has been denied us simply because of the educational institutions in our country, and just the whole system that we live in does not take into consideration, as Talib was saying, that particularly, they always want to tell you problems, no solution. Well, that solution is going to have to come from you. Poverty is a mind state. Ghetto is a mind state. Finances is a mind state. So until you're able to understand this condition that we find ourselves in and take into consideration that we're going to have to be responsible for our own self, for our own families, so that projection that we make, those smart goals that we make, the risk and psychological risk that we have to make, we have to do our own homework. We really have to do our own, because nobody is coming to save us. So we have to be really, really conscious of what is taking place, and be conscious of your own personal circumstances, and that income circle that you have right now, whatever it is, either you increase the income circle or you work that income circle to get to the point where you can increase that ability to have more money in all the different facets and ways that has been discussed today and in the past. But that 50-30-20 plan is an absolute must. In there, it says that 61% of individuals from age 25 to 35 don't have $1,000 in the bank. Now, you can't blame that on the system. You have to blame on your lack of knowledge, your lack of information that you're experiencing. Then once you get over 35, those statistics go up to the point, and I'll just give you one example here in St. Louis, 67% of the African-American community in St. Louis don't have $400 in the bank. So, we can't blame the system. We have to look at ourselves in a different way. And that comes with education, education, and education. I'll leave it with that. And thank you so much.
Alhamdulillah, Rashid. There's a couple of things. We had a comment in, Brother Najib put a comment in the chat box, and then we didn't hear from Brother Raheem, iPhone Raheem. So I don't know if that's brother or sister, but iPhone Raheem, did you have a comment you want to make?
Yes, assalamu alaikum. This is Brother Raheem from Jacksonville, North Carolina. I was invited by Brother Imam Adam Bia, and I missed the first part, and I wasn't quite sure of what was being discussed. I heard comments about level term, and I'm very familiar with those terms, those insurance product terms. However, I need to know more about what you're offering, because anyone can tell you in the insurance world right now, if you don't have a downline already, people just are not buying a lot of life insurance, especially from our community, because they don't understand it. And a prime example, I was talking to a colleague of mine, and he thought that the life insurance was basically to bury them in the ground. And I says, no, that's not what life insurance is used for. Life insurance is it's a product to to save money. And one of the best is an IUL, which is an insurance product as well as a savings product. And getting that over to people in our community is very, very, very hard. So they're thinking about burial insurance to put them away. But what you're offering, I missed it, and I need some more information, because maybe I can use what you have as a sales presentation when I do get back into the insurance side. However, it's a very slow market out there, and you have so many that would rather drop that life insurance to continue on with their daily lives, where there's economic problems that they're having, or they hopping from one product to the other because they think that it's best for them. And we all know that the sooner that you get life insurance, especially if you're younger, if you're in really good health, you can qualify for those really outstanding plans. And it becomes more crucial as we get older. We start taking medicine, we gain a little bit more weight. And that's what I've experienced, in which I've done some work with Woodman of the World, Lincoln Financial, sold products with AIG and some of the biggest ones out there. And so I need your help.
Alhamdulillah.
Brother Rahim,
For myself also, yes.
What I will tell you is, being somebody that was a president's counsel with Lincoln Financial back in the day, one of the things I learned was you don't sell life insurance.
Right.
Right.
People put money into life insurance, but I never sold life insurance.
You like this, right, bro?
What I always, when I worked with individuals, and most of the people I work with were business owners, was a life plan. And that's kind of what we started talking about today. And that's understanding that particular individual, or say it's a family or a group of business owners together that you're talking to, is understanding what their long-term goals and needs are. And everything is developed around their long-term goals and needs. And if an insurance product fits in that, fantastic. If it doesn't fit, fantastic. Is that you have to meet the needs of the people, of what they need to have happen in their life. So, you know, there are many situations like you were talking about, where people don't even understand. They have no understanding of their need for insurance, but they do have an understanding of what they want out of life. And they have X number of dollars and X number of years, probably, say everybody lives to 100. They have X number of years to accomplish that. And markets give you X percentage annual return on investment to help you toward that. Whether that's a real estate market, stock market, bonds, mutual funds, exchange traded funds, whatever. They give you a certain amount of help with their growth. When you put all that down on paper, they have their 100% goal, and somewhere between 0 and 100%, based on what their knowledge is and what their goals are and where they're starting at, what their resources are, you're going to be able to show them you're here. On 0 to 100, you're right here. Might be 49, might be 73, might be 87. They're going to be somewhere along that continuum. And then you're going to be able to tell them, for you to go from here to where you want to be, these are options for you. If you choose door number 1, this is what we'll do. Door number 2, this is what we'll do. Door number 3, this is what you do. And there's a cost associated with each one of those. And there's a risk element associated with each one of those, and there's a reward element associated with each one of those. They get to choose. You push the pin toward them, they check the box of where they want to go. 1, 2, or 3. And then you help them execute it. And every year you sit down with them again and say, are you sure this is where you want to go? And you make adjustments as need be with them. They have to be bought in. They have to own it. You can't sell it to them. Doesn't work like that. And the more money they have to pay you for your work, the more they have to own it. They have to own it all the way. Cannot be you pushing something toward them, trying to sell something. They have to understand that they have to buy it. That is something they're going to own. And I can help you with some ideas on how to use that approach. I can help you with ideas of how to get more people to talk to than you probably ever wanted to talk to in your life. It works.
Alhamdulillah. One of the things, excuse me, because I said I had a comment for Brother Najib, but it actually was for Raheem, because he was the one that put the comment in the chat box. But as I listened to you, because I'm a life and health insurance agent myself, and one of the things that I understand, and I bought a very expensive lesson that someone had given me this lesson for free, and then I wound up buying it, so now I know it, is that our best source of income is our book of business. So the book of business that you have built in the last year, 10 years, or however long you've been writing insurance is where you need to go back to right now. And each person that has dropped their insurance along the way, revisit them. What is it that you need right along about now? Are you in debt? How can we help you get out of debt? Because if I can show you a way to free up the money for, what you need in terms of insurance coverage, would that help you? But go back and offer a service. Go back and, help these people. And you'll find that when we discover a need, we'll always get rich by filling it. People have a need for financial information right now. Everybody's reeling with the cost of gas, groceries, and transportation, housing, all of that. Everybody's reeling. We're all dealing with that. So reach back out to your clients and the skills that you have, offer them. So, let me sit down with you. I want to talk to you. How's things going? Whatever approach you need. Edward got it. So sit with him and get the conversation, the pitch, but go back to your book of business and start there and get referrals. Is there someone else that could stand getting out of debt or whatever that you're offering? But start with your book of business. And yes, we understand that people are dropping the life insurance because of the cost of gas and et cetera. But you need to show them a way that they can have that and still afford gas, because most people don't know what to do with money. If you can show them what to do with money, I think they, you show some value in your services. And let me add this too. One of the things that I had made myself a note here. In terms of the plan that Edward presented, many, I'll just say, Caucasian families that weren't financially dysfunctional, children saw these types of plans in their everyday life. These things were talked about at the dinner table. Money was talked about at the dinner table. They talked about college, from early on, the money we're saving for your college, grandmama's going to put so much money in. They saw these plans in action at the dinner table and in their life. Some of us may have just seen them today. This is our trauma. This is what we need a remedy for. Is that we don't see this type of planning until way, late in life, if we see it all. what we have seen was people robbing Peter to pay Paul. And, ignoring Mary is, at all costs. So, this is our remedy. That's what we call this, and I repeat, remedial. Because we have got to go back and undo before we can go forward. So, but I think, was there someone else who had a question? Was it?
Now, I just wanted to let me make a quick comment. That's why my children, my two boys, independently called me Dr. No when they were growing up, because I was putting money away for their education and saying no to new Nintendo games and new Jordans.
And PlayStation and all that.
To the point that I remember my youngest son, Taz, of going to fairly expensive store and spending $150 on a pair of sneakers for him. And he took them to his mom and they went and exchanged them and got a $275 pair of sneakers. This, he lived with his mother. So, that's okay. My thing is that I knew what my budget was. I knew what I'd allocated for certain things. And as long as his space was in the store of having to accept a $150 pair of shoes, that was the money that was going to be spent max for a new pair of sneakers for him. And when you're doing your plans for yourself and your family, there are some of those hard decisions that you're going to make that people are not going to like until they need to like them. Right? So he's in college now, in his second year, he gets it. He gets why he's able to go to a school out of the country that costs $50 grand a year. He understands. And sometimes they don't understand until that point.
Tommy, you had your hand up.
Yes, ma'am, and I'll do my best to keep this very brief. And I want to thank you. This is one of the reasons that I want to thank you for putting this program together. You made a couple of points that I think are very important, and I'll put my video on here. Good to see you, Hope. Programs like this have been around. I think it comes down to priorities in terms of the why point. It comes to priorities. So what Brother Edward was just talking about in terms of going and buying expensive sneakers that we can't afford. And you mentioning earlier about certain communities talking about money and finances in their households. And those are conversations that we aren't quite having. My father grew up on a teacher's salary, which was respectable for our families back then. He is a silent, so he's about 81. And I remember asking him one time, he did pretty well on the teacher's salary, even though obviously he wasn't probably making more as his white counterparts were teaching. And I asked him, because I noticed that he did pretty well, why didn't you ever talk to me about finances? Because I would always see him writing down his books, writing, out his bills and stuff like that. And he's like, well, son, I thought they taught you that stuff in school. And I was like, no, even though I went to college, even though I got 2 degrees, they never taught us how to build wealth for ourselves. Right. They taught us how to build wealth for someone else. And so some of our parents and our grandparents naturally assumed once we got into these segregated school environments that we were learning more things than we were really learning. And it wasn't that white children or Latin American children weren't learning it, they just weren't learning it in their schools. On the most part, they were learning it in their households by having those conversations at home, or some of them were going to work with their mother or with their fathers who owned their own businesses. And so that was where they were getting their financial education. It is 2023. And, one of the things that I've always advocated is we've got to turn the TV off and start opening the book again. Because ultimately what we're looking at is if we look at the amount of time that our televisions are on and what that programming looks like, and specifically to us and our outcomes, it's very easy to understand why we have, close to 50% of our households who cannot incur a $400 expense without being in trouble. And that's not just our household. So if that's all of America,
That's
you
right.
can imagine what our households are, because you look at what our household income is, we look at what our net worth is, and that answers all the questions for you. And so I want to thank you so much for putting this program and making it accessible. The challenge is people not prioritizing and making this as important as watching soap operas, as watching what next housewives or house husbands or whatever city it is.
Or
And building
playoff
that-
games and Super Bowls.
Exactly. Nothing wrong with any of those things. But in terms of prioritizing what's most important, now you compare that, we're not saying that the American government hasn't done what it has not done to our communities, but the question is, what are we doing to catch up? What are we doing to compete? Because when they talk about race, it is a race, but it's not as much a skin color, but in terms of power and control. So as a result of that, we've got to have different conversations within our families and with our younger generation. It's good to have money, but if you can't keep it to whatever it says, it's not helping you if you're not keeping what you're earning. We've got to hold ourselves accountable. We've got to take more responsibility than what we are when it comes to these decisions that we are making in our households with our children, if we're going to get a different outcome. And so that's why I want to thank you guys for what you're doing and making this information available, because it's not going to come from any other group of people, as you mentioned. If it doesn't start at home, charity starts at home, so does building wealth.
That's right.
So if it doesn't start here, it's not going to happen for our community, because this is not being taught in our school. Never has, don't anticipate it ever will.
Yes, sir.
I apologize for being longer than I expected.
That's all right.
Thank you, because that has been our premise from the very beginning. This was, the idea, we were not taught this in school. That's why this is 091. We didn't have it. We didn't have it at the dinner table, and we didn't have it at school. It's just, we've had all manners, and I again say trauma around money, from living in homes without utilities, living in homes, in certain cases, if you came from rural areas, you lived in homes where there wasn't plumbing and there were outhouses. So we've come a long way, but we've got a long way to go. And until we understand the true nature of our mental situation around this money, and then I'll say this on the other side, is that if you look at our ancestors who came straight up out of slavery and became senators and representatives, and they went to the state house, and the Black woman who opened a bank back in the 20s, she was the daughter of a slave. So, but they had that desire. I mean, they came up out of the fields with that burning desire, but somewhere along the line, with the burning of crosses and the burning of flesh hanging from trees, we've gotten turned around. And not what our ancestors used to do, just out of the desire to do. We have just, we've gotten confused.
I would agree. And to be honest with you, I think we have to own more responsibility for that as well, because, it's what we do with our time is what makes the difference. And, again, I even want to push back in terms of us making progress. I would say in certain degrees, we've lost progress. And the reason I say that is if we look at what our grandparents and great-grandparents had, they had each other. They did business with each other. They understood the importance of community over self. They understood the value of doing business with each other, even though it was legally mandated that there were certain things that they couldn't do. They had land. I mean, if we look at the transfer of wealth in our communities from Big Mama and them and Pawpaw and them and the land that they accumulated and what is happening, the houses, when they pass, there is a massive transfer of wealth from our community to other communities that is happening. So we are actually losing ground in some ways and nobody's talking about it. It's very, very frustrating to see when I talk to and hear from people all the time, and they don't want, whether it's a business, whether it's land, whether it's home. And we look at that transfer of wealth from our communities to other communities because we just don't see the value. And that's the importance of this.
Yeah, let me go. Hey,
That-
Amir, I have to take
I was
off. I have
gonna-
to take off. Oh, go ahead. I have to take off real quick. I just want to say this, and you're making an excellent point. That's a whole new different subject matter, just like this term Black history, where we've been blacked out of history from lack of education and information. So I don't even use that term, but I just want to say, you said something that was so important. Manage your time. If we don't manage our time, the time will manage us. And we see this what we find ourselves in right now, that now we're at a time where we need to have done those particular things that we didn't do in the past. So therefore, now we're suffering the consequences. And we have not made progress in the manner which we should. And you hit on some great points. Yeah, that's a whole new subject matter we need to address and go into, especially during this time period what we refer to as African American Heritage New Year. To me, this new month they're talking about, that was given to us. That's not us. So when we start thinking outside the box and creating our own box and manage that, we'll see some difference in our lives. And we just have to take this personal responsibility and self-advocate for ourselves, and then look out for the support system like we have right here, right now. We're going to have to get that support on a continuous basis, but more importantly, drive it to your family members, drive it to your community members. We're all in the same pot, and it's hot. I just want to get out of it. All right, so with that, we'll talk to you guys a little later. I'll see you next week. And Adam, go on hit that home base business for you while you're at it. We'll go from there. All right. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
Brother Adam, you have your hand up. You muted.
You're on mute.
I think Hope,
Sorry about that. Appreciate it. Oh, yeah,
Hello?
brother, I'm glad Brother Tommy brought that
Said what?
information in about real estate and what we had coming out of slavery. We were able to get land. Some was given to us by the slave master, the few slave masters that had a guilty conscience. And I put the emphasis on few. Others were able to bargain and buy land once they got their freedom. And over the years, over the centuries, the land has been lost. Back in the late 70s, when I was in college, I worked on a project talking about the land loss among Blacks. This was in the late 70s. And how many African Americans had lost land since slavery. And at that rate, they would say we would be virtually landless. And today when we look at all the land that's owned and the percentages, we're virtually landless. And we know the stories about our relatives moving north and didn't see fit to send money back down to pay the taxes on the land. And because the taxes weren't paid on the land, the Caucasians took advantage of the law and paid the taxes and got the deed and got the land. And that's still happening. I know in Fayetteville, where the mall is located, a lot of shopping areas and commercial areas out by the mall. Well, I found that back in the 30s and the 40s, that land was owned by African Americans. A lot of that land out there. So I'm sure that same process is happening all over the country. So when you talk about wealth and everybody says that land is called real estate because it's real, when you talk about that, we see how much is being lost. And so going back to, I think Brother Talib said that you have to have a mindset. Where's that echo coming from?
An echo.
Yeah. I guess they figure I'm saying what I'm saying so good, they want to say it twice for me. I don't know. But the mindset, a wealth creation mindset. And we had to share that amongst our people. And that's what's, you know, and I think I said last week, the problem is in this highly commercial environment, they don't want the average American having a mindset of building wealth, or they don't want the average American thinking. That's why they run commercials on everything. They don't want us thinking about how to build wealth, how to get any kind of independence and things of that nature. So I'm hoping that we can get more and more of our people, more and more of our families that can tune in to what we're doing. And not saying we're the only ones in America doing it, but to show you how much of a need there is today, and how much of a need that people can find out about something like this. And it would help them from being taken advantage of. I mean, I'm looking at social media, and there's a person saying that the tax benefits of LLCs, and he's got a nice little car, and he's doing on YouTube a live presentation. And I look at this stuff and I say, this is junk. He's taking advantage of someone's lack of information and making it worse. So it's needed. So I want to thank everybody for hanging in there and doing this, and thank the people that are logging on and trying to learn, because it can only help. And I'm through.
All right.
Alhamdulillah.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum
One of
assalam.
the things couple things I wanted to respond to. One, Tommy, your father was correct. And I'm saying this to us as being one of the older people on this call. I did get financial literacy, if you want to call it that. In fact, when I was in middle school, 7th through the 9th grade here in Washington, D.C., we had a class that we took every year called Life Skills. And in that class, we literally learned how to read and write a simple lease. We were able to open up a savings account in the school. We learned how to write a check, balance a checkbook, things of that nature. So I'm 70 years old. I got this back in the, what would it have been? The mid 60s, 65, 66, somewhere in there. I got that information. And its value to me still exists today, because I did not move to that secondary level, to the college and the university life. I decided to become an entrepreneur. But those same skills that I learned in junior high school, I still use them today. Simple bookkeeping methods, so that I can sort of be able to track my money. And to Brother Raheem, you are still on the line. I want to offer you some encouragement, because in the last month, in the last 30 days, I purchased 2 insurance policies for my children that I intend to leave to them. Why did I do that? Because my parents did it for me. When they didn't think that baby boy was going to live long enough that they were going to have to bury me before they passed, they purchased an insurance policy on me. And when they realized that Allah had chosen me to become this Muslim, as they used to say, they turned those policies over to me. And those policies, lo and behold, this was my first experience with insurance. Those policies came with cash value that had been building up for years. And I was able to use that. So I'm doing that for my children as well. And the last thing I'm going to say is this. and I know many of us haven't done this yet, but I did. I went cemetery shopping. I went cemetery shopping for the benefit of myself and my family. And it won't, by Wednesday of next week, I would have owned 3 burial plots for myself, my wife, and my daughter. Because my son said to me, Dad, don't get one for me. We were going to buy 4. He said, don't get one for me because my life is just starting. I don't know where I'm going to end up. So don't make that investment. Don't spend that additional money to get me a burial plot. And so I listened to him. But the point I'm trying to make to us is I made that investment so that my family won't have to. Because because I answered my own call when I said to them in a family meeting, I want you all to consider what tomorrow would look like if I died tonight. So tomorrow for us is just a little bit better because we made that investment. So I just wanted to be sure to, to say that all is not lost. There is, and I mean, well, she's not on the line anymore, but there is hope. There is hope for us. And as long as we maintain that hope and get off the pity pot and stop all this doom and gloom, we are going to be, we will be better off. And what we're offering here at Graceline is that vehicle. So, assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam.
I pray Allah continue to bless, to bless us as an organization and to bless those of you who are here, as well as those of you who intended to be here, but we couldn't. And I'll say it, I've said it once and I'll say it again, keep coming back because it works. Thank you.
Brother Imam, if I can say
and-
this, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, ma'am.
Yeah, let me add a frugal, I'm really into studying frugality. So let me add just a frugal touch here with this buying of the cemetery plots, which I advocate because so many of us are saying, we don't believe in insurance, et cetera. That's what we'll buy the insurance plot. But there is a website that you can go to and they sell plots that were not used, that people have bought for whatever reason. And I wrote an article, and I think it's coming out this week. And this is the second time I did a revision. Actually, this is my second revision on it. But you can just Google, plots for sale, cemetery plots for sale. And it's national. And you can go and find, when my mother passed, I did that. And I went and looked it up because I knew she was in hospice for a couple of years. So I had time to make arrangements. You can buy cemetery plots off the internet that people haven't used. The benefits of that, you get a much cheaper than they sold at, originally, because these people now are trying to get rid of them. And it takes a long time to sell a plot. So sometimes they're willing to deal. I wound up, the plot that I was trying to get, I think he wanted $1,000 for it. But after we had talked, he had 2 plots. And so we talked back and forth. He took a liking to me, and he and his wife made a decision. Since I was a good Christian girl, I never told them who I was. They said, praise the Lord. I said, praise the Lord. So they decided to give me both plots for $700. So now I have 1 plot still in my file cabinet that I have to use to donate or whatever. So if, I wanted to bring that out, is that you can buy these plots at various different cemeteries across the United States, and you just Google, and I forgot. And in the article that I wrote, I did have several different of the sites. I just can't remember them this moment. But all you have to do is just Google cemetery plots for sale. And then secondly, I wanted to make a comment. This going back to Edward's presentation about the buying of the life insurance after you got to a certain age. The older you get, And you buy life insurance, the more expensive it gets. So I do advise people are young by term. And I came from the, A.L. Williams world when it says by term investor difference. I just didn't know how to invest. So I never got around to part 2. But what I did learn, I still advise people to buy term, but I say at a certain point in time, you need to go and convert over to whole life insurance because it's the only thing you can leave with that's tax-free. All the money that we leave in our other accounts, our beneficiaries are going to pay tax on it. So I say, at a certain, don't wait till you get 55. So if you get that 30-year term at 25, then when it dies out, when it passes, then it's time to buy that whole life insurance. It is going to be much cheaper than buying life insurance in your late 60s or your 70s, and they stop selling it when you're about 80. So that's what I really want. And third thing about the life insurance is the AARP versus savings. Everything with AARP on it is higher than every other product on the market, as far as I know. And I am a UHC, a United Healthcare agent. That's one of the products I carry. And so when I compare their Medicare supplement plans, when I compare their life insurance plans and et cetera, to the other ones that I carry, they're always the highest. So I never advise anybody to buy an AARP. Edward probably use that because the access to prices are easy to get. So it was
you can find their information easy. You don't have to.
Yes. So you could, so it was good. I understood what he was doing, but I just wanted to comment, and so those are my points. You can buy the plot, at much less than market. And then you have the value of that. Some cemeteries are closed. Those plots have been, that area have been sold out, and they open up maybe new areas. But those areas that are sold out are very desirable. They have the trees, the beautiful landscaping, et cetera, So, but those plots are not sold now. But when you go online, you may find some of those heritage plots, So in beautiful cemeteries that may be closed to the general public right along about now. But that's my frugal tip.
It's good.
And that was
I didn't even know that
that's an
existed.
excellent.
Yep.
That is good to know.
Oh, and the other thing, you can buy caskets online.
Yeah, I knew you could do that.
Yeah,
I didn't know
Walmart sells
about the plot.
caskets.
Yeah,
Yeah, Walmart sells caskets and some other places too. Costco, I believe, used to sell them. And the insurance company, and not the insurance, but the funeral home has to take the casket. It's not optional. If I buy my casket, I can ship it to the funeral home and they have to take it.
Right.
I don't have to spend $3,000, $4,000, $6,000 for a casket. I can spend $800, $900. I bought my mother's insurance casket, and I told the insurance home, I said, I got the casket, I'm gonna have it shipped here. I'm gonna pay for it now and have it shipped here. She said, oh no. She said, I can do that for you. I said, at the same price. She said, well, yes, I'll give you the same price. But if I had done it with her, I was gonna pay much more. That identical casket I got for the online price. And she had it there the next day.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, this stuff is interesting. I was just sitting here thinking about plugging all that information in, and when Sister Mira was talking about the term insurance versus whole life, we used to have the modeling, and I was fortunate enough because I worked for Cigna, which is, that unit I work for was bought by Lincoln Financial, that we had a back office, and you gave your information to the back office, and the back office ran the numbers for you to do your presentations. And the whole 3 option, here are 3 different scenarios that we can solve your problem, that was one of the sales tools, if you want to call it that we use, or presentation tools. And there was always one that showed, especially with a younger couple, because their finances weren't what they were going to be when they were 55, obviously, right? You hope so. They had less money, so they started out with term insurance.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, you could run scenarios where every 5 years, they were converting a portion of the term insurance to permanent insurance. People call it whole life, different
Mhm.
things,
Right.
universal life. I mean, there are a lot of different names out there for some of these products.
Mhm.
But like every 5 years, they were doing conversions. They were getting where it was permanent. Because that was one of the decision tools, especially for wealthier people,
Mhm.
people who were going to and potentially incur estate taxes, is that you can, through the life insurance product, you can create an estate outside of your business estate. You know, what your business is worth, what your real estate is worth, all these things. You can create an estate outside of that for your heirs for the purpose of potentially even paying your estate taxes. And all of that money that is created within the life insurance policy, if you structure the contract properly, is tax-free every dime. It could be $5 million. All that money is tax-free to the beneficiary. Or in many cases, the trust that's set up, you know, to accept it and things of that nature. However, it gets to the heirs for their purposes, that you can do that within an insurance contract.
Mhm.
And we did that with business owners as well. You have 4 guys or 4 people that own a business together. But what happens when one of them passes away? You know, let's say it's it's an accounting firm and the woman passes away and her interest, her 25% interest in the firm is going to go to her husband, who is a surgeon. He didn't know anything about accounting. In fact, she's run the books all those years. Those other 3 accountants do not want her husband as a partner. So how do you get out of that situation where you can get her 25% into his hands without creating a taxable event, which is a transfer of stock and then him selling the stock back to the other 3 partners? That's a taxable event. Well, you use life insurance for that. And there's many, many different tools that you can use life insurance for. So, I mean, there's so many scenarios we could talk about and need to talk about with people. But that would be 24 hours a day if you run through all these scenarios.
Mhm.
So, and that's one of the reasons that I tell people that, you know, when you're clear in your head as to what your goals are, you know what your situation is, you know what your risk tolerance is, that you need to go sit down with the financial professional and you need to run through these scenarios. There's nothing you should not ask. What if this happens? What if this happens? What if this happens? What if this happens? Even buying disability insurance. Most people don't realize that they should first get their private disability insurance before they sign up for their group insurance. Why is that? If you get the group insurance first and then go buy private insurance, the private insurance company will limit you on how much income you can receive via disability, because they'll subtract out what you have in group from what their underwriters say is 70%, 80%. If you get the private insurance first, you can get as close to 100% of replacing your income as you want, as they'll allow you. And this is why you should shop around. Some of them are 75, some of them are 85. I've seen some companies out there that allow you to recover 90% of your income through long-term disability. Then when you go to your company that you work with, you can max out the company benefit. And I've known cases where people got over 100% income replacement when they had long-term disability from using that model, because you're not limited in a group insurance policy. It's whatever you can get in the policy, available to everybody.
Wow.
So you just
We will have the 18th is our week that we're going to do insurance, and then Aaron Kahn will be here. And Aaron is really, really knowledgeable about insurance. He's as knowledgeable as Edward, you know. So, and I always love to hear his presentations. He's really, really good.
Aaron used to be a regular with us. So I'm
yes.
to,
well, look, Edward, I'm gonna say this to you, but I'm also saying it to us. 40 years ago, I had a junkie to tell me that the whole world revolves around what you don't know.
Interesting comment. I would love to sit down and talk with him and have him
Look.
extrapolate on that.
Well, look, and here's what I'm saying to you. Just that little tidbit of information of what the problem was and how you would resolve it told me that as much as I think I know, there's something that's been missing. Those little tidbits of information as to how to get out of something. That is what we need. And even if I don't fully understand it, what it says to this little pea brain is that there's something out there that I need to look into this just a little more.
Yeah, you can always learn something. But let me throw this in because it just occurred to me when you go to the sites to look, if you decide to want to look at the cemetery plots, they have cemetery plots, Islamic plots, Jewish plots, and Christian. So you're not limited to just, if you decide you want to be buried in an Islamic cemetery, you can opt, those are options, that you can do that, so
and look, I'm telling you, because I went cemetery shopping. Look at those cemeteries and find out from the directors or the managers what the process is going to be once that cemetery is full. You also want to know who owns it, because if it's a cemetery that's owned by one person, it may look good now, but when that person dies, who's going to do the maintenance and the upkeep?
Yeah.
All of a sudden, what used to be beautiful is not. And one of the things that we did, what I ended up doing when we purchased our 3 plots, was built into our agreement. Everybody that gets a cemetery plot at this cemetery, you pay just a little over $1,000 in the plan for that they put into an escrow account. So this is something that is building income long after the last person dies, so that there's always money there for maintenance and upkeep, so that your great grandchildren aren't going somewhere and got to take a weed whacker in there in order to see your tombstone.
Right.
Well, that's one of the things about getting into some of the heritage cemeteries is that maintenance is they have already figured that out. Where I buried my mother is the same place that who was the author of Gone with the Wind? She's buried there, and a whole lot of Confederate generals and VIPs from Atlanta area, and so that cemetery is well maintained. But it was one of my criteria that I wanted a cemetery that was going to be well maintained. So you want to look at that. There's one not close to the masjid, and they cut the grass about when it begins to obscure the headstones, then they cut the grass. It's about maybe 2-3 times a year they cut I said, I don't want my mother there. But it's 1 o'clock and I've got to go. And I'm going to leave you all to finish discussing. Next week, we will have, inshallah, Brother Hood Williams from Saturna. Saturna is
his ebook will be, it won't be on the website initially, but it will be circulated amongst everyone who has signed up.
Okay. Yeah, he's given us a free ebook about the 5 pillars of prosperity, it's called, and it's produced by Saturna. And I got that book several years ago, and it's full of a lot of good information for those, especially for those of us who are Muslim. Stuff we got a lot of myths around money in our community, money, insurance, and so many things. And just, that's another thing that keeps us behind, is that we're scared of this money, we're superstitious about it. And so, but yeah, inshallah, then look forward to hearing from Brother Hood next week. And then, as I said, the week after that, we'll be dealing with life insurance And I want to talk a little bit about disability, but I may have Edward come on and talk. You're much more, I don't do too much disability insurance. I understand the value of it, but I sell more health insurance than I do anything. That's my
Well,
specialty.
it's an interesting thing because, you know, back in those days when I was an active agent, there was an older guy there, and his name was Bob Malstead. I'll never forget him. I mean, Bob had been in the business 30 years, and 25 of those years in a row, he made President's Council, which meant he was making over $250,000 a year at that time. And Bob said, "Son, you sell any disability today?" And I must have had the look on my face like I don't know what he's talking about. So we spent, I remember that day, it was Wednesday. I mean, I remember it like it was yesterday because Bob is a guy from New York that made his way to Texas. And he looked like a standard New Yorker. He's 6'5", had the big old jowly face. Bob took me in his office, and for 2 hours, Bob talked to me about the ins and outs of disability insurance, why it was important. Bob did most of his work with private business owners. And if you're a private business owner, from a trucking company down to a plumbing company, like whatever, if you go down, your business is going to suffer mightily, and you could lose everything that you have.
Yeah.
But guess what? There's no insurance payoff for that, no life insurance payoff for that, right? But if you have the right disability insurance, you have the ability to keep everything going.
Or the right annuity. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm talking about if a guy's, say a guy's 40 years old, guy's 40 years old in good health, you know, and he owns a trucking company. He just happens to be out there helping his guys one day. And I'm telling you a true story of a guy who was very wealthy and was engaged to a woman who was a millionaire from a millionaire oil company family. And he liked to go out and he liked to help his drivers. This is an oil field company. And he liked to go out every now and then and get his hands dirty. And they were at a rig. He's 40 years old. He's in perfect health. He has a great company. Company's named after his daddy. He took it over after his dad. And a wire dangling from the drilling rig hit the headache bar on the truck, and he was holding on to that metal, and it killed him. But it took him 9 months to die. Right? So another family came in and bought him out because his income was gone. His income was totally gone. He had no disability insurance. He did have life insurance. He had no disability insurance. Now, had he lived, he would have still lost it. He would have lost it.
Yeah, I always.
And, you know, the disability insurance that was available.
Can't hear you anymore. We lost you.
Yeah, you froze up, Edward. If you can hear me.
Yeah, but I make I have something written across my desk and says, "Can you afford to live? You know, if you don't die, you have a serious illness. Can you afford to live if you don't die?" So that's a question we have to ask ourselves, and that's where disability insurance really comes in. So we will get back to disability. Edward, you still there?
Yeah. Edward's presentation and the way it ended was the perfect example of what he said. The guy was gone, wasn't he?
Yes, sir. Only you would see the irony in that.
Adam has that dry humor.
Oh, man. Yeah, I have a client that sells insurance, and she contacted me a year and a half ago about doing accounting work for her. So I saw her about 2 months ago, and I hadn't heard from her since. And I'm thinking she fired me already. Then she came and admitted that she's been dragging her feet. So I'm gonna call and ask her, why does a business need insurance? And I know she's gonna give me a nice answer, save the business, etc. I said, then see me as your insurance policy. Because if you don't file taxes, right?
You ain't gonna have no business. That's right.
You
It's
have more
right.
than a business, you're gonna have a case.
It be gone.
Yeah, there's a lot, in the scenario that Edward printed out, you didn't see tragedies. You didn't see that, lawsuits. You didn't see, going to jail. You didn't see all the things that come, but we can make some decisions that like, oh, that was the wrong thing to do. I co-signed for somebody and, look at this thing with the cryptocurrency that just went under. That I don't know, what is that, 150 million or $1 billion that he swindled, another Ponzi scheme? And though he had some celebrity spokespersons, and they have cases now for fraud.
Right.
I'm sure they didn't think that when they went out there and put their name out there, you need to buy this particular cryptocurrency, that they were expecting to come up with a case of fraud.
No, because they didn't. It was one of those things where they had no understanding of the product. It's like you selling any other product, a lawnmower, and you put your name behind it. This is the greatest lawnmower ever. My name's Tom Brady, and I endorse this lawnmower. And every 10th person that buys one of those lawnmowers, the blades flying off of it and cutting their leg off. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's an extreme example, but it's the same thing with the cryptocurrency. This has happened with a lot of other different products and services over the years, especially with celebrities. Kim Kardashian paid $1 million fine about 3 weeks ago for the exact same thing, because she went on, she's an influencer. So she went on Instagram and did all these endorsements of a crypto product. And, she basically went in front of the judge, threw her hands up and said, she did it for the money. She didn't know anything about crypto.
Right.
But she got paid like $10 million to do it.
Right. Yep.
So, I mean, those kinds of things happen. It's individuals like us who don't have that bank book that she has to, pay those fines and things like that, that we have to be very careful and very knowledgeable about anything that we place our money in. I mean, we have to know and understand beyond the shadow of a doubt that this is something that I can trust to at least give me a fair chance, right? I mean, and that's something we didn't experience that with crypto. There's nobody in the crypto world that understands crypto. Nobody.
Right.
There's nobody there that understands it. It's the
I
learning
agree.
process.
I agree with you.
It's I read a case the other day, a woman who went out celebrating. She was drinking at a bar and she drank too much. So she leaves the bar driving and has a car accident. And she runs into this house, breaks the gas line, and it caused an explosion in the neighborhood, took out a subdivision just about. And it was something like almost $11 million worth of damage. And they sued her for it. She then turned around and sued the bar because they said they should have known better than to serve her alcohol. They should have known that she had too much to drink. So, here was this bar owner, he's not thinking. I think in a lot of bars, they do tell you now, the limit. But she literally turned around. She said, y'all was still serving me alcohol way past my limit. So she passed that $11 million that suit right on, So as business owners, we have to be very, very astute about what we're doing. And, I know that as an insurance agent, I'm responsible for having insurance in case I give someone some bad advice.
Right.
They can come back and sue me. You know, so I have to have errors and omissions, and they just raised the limit, you know, to $2 million. I have to have carry $2 million in case I give
errors and
bad
omissions.
advice.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but we don't know where you know, hammer may drop. So, but we
Mhm.
definitely got to be looking, you know, so how will this turn out? You know,
Yeah, and that goes back to that whole thing of knowing what your goals are and knowing what your risk tolerance is and knowing what you have available to meet your goals. And not being distracted by the bright, shiny object from that. You know, if you have your plan in place, there are lots of things that look good, but you can't be 100% sure or even 50% sure that they're going to work within your plan. And, you know, if something like crypto is at the high end of risk, it's also at the high end of reward, the way it was going at one point in time. There were some great rewards that were a part of it, right?
Yeah.
Does that pendulum swing back and forth? Does that fit your risk tolerance? You know, if you're not a person that has the resources or the mindset that, you know, you can ride that buck and bronc up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down, you need to stay away from it, right?
Right.
And if the downside risk of it would severely impact your plan, you have to stay away from it.
Yeah.
Right. Don't fall for the old con of
Right.
trying to get something for nothing.
Right, because what you have in place is a system. And the system is set in place to help you manage your psychology. Because the psychology of the bright, shiny thing that has great promise, like buying racehorses and stuff like that, those things they're going to be placed in front of you. You're going to see them time after time after time after time as you go through life. You know, this year it's something else. 5 years from now, it's something else. 5 years later, it's something else. 20 years down the road, somebody's going to present something else to you. And they might be the greatest thing since sliced bread. If they don't fit you
In your
and your plan,
right.
you have to say no.
Yeah, leave it alone.
As much as you're salivating, you have to say no.
Mhm.
And as much as you know your buddy's going to come back to you later and say, dude, you should have got in it. You will not believe
That's
how
right.
much money I made.
That's right. Yes.
You've got to be content with it. You said no.
Yeah, just ignore the
And
noise.
you worked your plan,
That's
Yeah.
right.
right? And you got to the goals that you set for yourself.
Right.
And you just pat him on the back and you know how fortunate he was and you're happy for him. But that's not you.
Right. Mhm. That's right. No, you are absolutely right, particularly with that crypto. You don't know how many times I had people to literally get angry with me because I didn't even want to listen to the pitch. Because from the very beginning, I would say to them, I don't understand it. And if you've got to explain it to me, then that tells me I don't want to be involved in it. Now, real estate, I understand. I know that if I go pay a certain piece of price for a certain piece of property, that it's going, particularly at the prices that I'm going to try to get it at, it's going to have some appreciable value, even in a bad market. Right? But that I understand. But this stuff with crypto, if I got to go buy a book on, crypto for dummies, I don't need it. I don't need it. And I think how you have framed it, Edward, and I didn't necessarily define it this way, but because I never really looked at myself as having a plan, but essentially that's what I've got. For me to stand up to someone and just say no. And sometimes I say no to people and I'll walk away. I don't even have an explanation for you. you know, because even to do that, you know, I don't want to get into a back and forth, you know, you trying to convince me that what you have to offer is right.
Right.
No.
It's embarrassing. That's embarrassing for both people.
I have a brother that got me once on crypto. And I guess in his book, he says, wait 9 months and the person will forget that you did it. On the 10th month, he called me again on another deal. You understand? And I said no. No, thank you. I just blow that one. Let me know how it turned out.
Right.
I ain't heard nothing else from her.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
I have a standard sentence. You don't invest in nothing you don't understand.
That's right.
So, you know, as I kept wanting to invest in cryptocurrency, I think Edward and I had some conversations back and forth. And there were some people in our community who was doing real well with it. And I was just like, but I don't understand it. I just don't understand it. I'm gonna leave it alone. And so at this point in time, you know, I felt bad then because they were making big money. Ooh, we just, you know, we got so much money, we burning it. You know, so but I was like, I don't understand it. You know,
We should invite those people on the program, see if they'll show up.
They'll be doing a lot of lying now.
That's right.
The first time with me, it was inshallah.
Mhm.
You don't get but one inshallah from it.
Right. Yes, sir.
That's it.
Yes, sir. You know, oh man, but you know, I will say this. I mean, it is going to be our individual life experiences that are going to carry, if it doesn't carry us through, you know, hopefully it'll carry our children through, you know, because the benefit that I had here in DC was coming up during an era where people were out, I mean, literally downtown playing the Murphy, you know, thinking that the Murphy, it's a con game that it works because the person that you're conning, you later learn really had larceny in their heart because they thought they were going to get something for nothing.
okay.
Okay, it's usually played by 2 to 3 people, depending on the marks that you're trying to get. Somebody will come up to you and they ain't from a foreign country, but they'll have an accent. And they'll tell you this story and they'll flash what you think is a wad of cash, but it ain't but maybe a couple of dollars that's rolled up in newspaper. But it looks like they got a whole lot of money and they tell you about how they're afraid to put it in the bank. And the next thing you know, you taking them to the bank and putting your money with theirs because they promise that they're going to come back at 4 o'clock and they're going to give you your money and some more. And then they will tell you, make sure that you're there. I don't want nobody else there. And I heard the game. And in fact, they played the game on my wife, who's the woman who's now my wife. And when she told me, I took her in the room, I sat her down and I told her, your money ain't there, ain't nobody coming. Then I asked her to tell me what the guys looked like. And I knew who they were. But it was nothing, I knew that there was nothing I could do about it. You know, I didn't have that kind of juice, but I had enough juice to know who the players were. And she had been conned. And I said, now, go ahead and open up the money that he left you. And it wasn't even $1 in there. It was all newspaper.
I know what you're talking about. Now, years ago, I was in my late teens, early 20s. And this guy stopped me on the street. He said he was new in town. He needed to find directions to the Gray Dog station. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, Gray Dog station, but he act like, you know, the bus station, the Greyhound bus station.
That's right.
And he had that, you know, you can hold my money so I don't lose it. And if you do this and that, you know, and I looked at him and I said, you know, oh, no, ain't no way, ain't no way. So now I know what you're talking about.
Right.
You know, I
But
know
those,
what you're talking
but the point I'm making to us is, it is that we need to start reflecting on lessons or experiences that we've had that we can put into our plan right now to help us avoid some of these risks. So when I hear something that sounds too good to be true, then most likely it is.
Right.
And then now we all have the benefit of al-Islam, you know, where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you know, instructed us, you know, that you know, we stay away from that we think, you know, that which we doubt.
Yeah.
So if you're not absolutely sure, err on the side of caution, right? And remember those things that we had, particularly when you get of age and you keep reminding your children that you know, your mother or your father, we're old school. Well, all that really means is that we got it right the first time, right? And so when I think about coming up as a little boy, the insurance man knocked at the door.
Oh, yeah,
And you paid you paid the insurance on a weekly basis.
that's right.
It might have been $2, $4 a week, but the insurance man came knocking at the door and he called, and my parents kept the same insurance guy. Matter of fact, they passed the insurance guy on to me.
Yeah, it was called miners insurance. It started out like with coal miners, and they used to sell that insurance, and they would pay for it on a weekly basis, a nickel, a dime, a quarter.
Okay,
You know,
whatever
my
it
mother
was.
had a little
That's right.
book, you know, and the guy would come and, you know, put it out, the information on the book. My husband tell this story, and he says that the insurance man was due that day, so his mother didn't have the money. So she said, when he comes, you tell him I'm not here, right? And so she
I
said,
heard that story too.
yeah, when he gets, so when he opened the door, the insurance man knocks on the door. So the mother hides behind the door. So when he opens the door, the mother's standing there, right? So the insurance man asked for his mother and everything. He said, "Well, now my mother, she not home. She not here." He said, "Well, when will she be back?" He said, so he looked behind the door. He said, "Mama,
Mama, when you coming?
when you gonna be back?" You know, so, but I'm gonna end I'm gonna end today on this other story I'm gonna tell you. And that's when I first started out in sales a few decades ago. They had
Wait
these,
a minute, Bill, wait a minute. I gotta finish laughing at the first.
no, I'm gonna let you keep you laughing. I want you to bust both ribs. And so I had gone to this seminar, and so they asked experienced salespeople to come and talk to us newbies, right? I think the product was Shackley. I don't know if you all remember Shackley vitamins and stuff like that. Way back in the day of Shackley.
Yeah.
So anyway, so the experienced salespeople, each one of them is getting up and they're giving a lesson that they, you know, have learned in their this is their experience. So this one guy got up, and he's the only one that I can remember what he said. He says, when you start wanting something for nothing, you are a failure. And I never forgot that. So it has saved me many, many times with all these free scams, and you're gonna like this and that. When you start wanting something for nothing, you are a failure.
Right.
So I keep that in the back of my mind, and that's been, you know, that's been quite a few years that I learned that lesson. So on that note, my brothers and sisters, I'm going to have to leave you all, continue the conversation, and we look forward to seeing you next. I look forward to seeing you next week. The rest of y'all are still here. All right, assalamu alaikum.
Yeah, to what you were saying, Imam Talam, the key thing is, however they do it, whether they do it formally or informally, is that people have to develop a plan.
Right.
That's the very first step. is that they develop some plan that they are 100% bought into,
Mhm. Right,
and that they're willing to, whether it's in a notebook, it's on a computer program, however they have it, that they are willing to, on a regularly scheduled basis, go back
and
and
revisit.
make a look at that plan. It can be monthly, it can be you can start with just your budget.
Mhm,
Whatever it is
mhm,
that you commit to that particular plan and owning it and
Mhm.
being willing to abide by it,
Right.
outside of emergencies and things like that that happen in life. But
And go back and check every now and then.
yes,
Make sure you still on point.
right.
Yeah.
Make sure you're following your own commitment that you've made to yourself and your loved ones
Yes.
as closely as you can.
Mhm.
When people get into the habit of doing that, the managing of everything else, whether it's, hey, we got an extra, we've been saving, we got an extra $150. What do we want to do with it? Or we got an extra 300 or 500, whatever the case may be. What do we want to do with that? Then those possibilities start to come up,
Yes.
and you can start to expand your plan and your vision for yourself because you see something positive working. You recognize the fact that you can actually adhere to this. This is something, wow, that wasn't so tough. We made it 90 days.
Mhm.
Look how much money we saved and
Right.
these type things, we should keep this going. And what are we going to do with this excess that we have and things like that? You put it in a savings. You can put it in a savings account to start with, just so you have it readily available to you. You can run down there and get it at any minute. Go to
Mhm.
ATM machine and pull it up, whatever the case may be. That's fine. But at
Mhm.
some point, you expand even past that, and your dreams can start getting a little bit bigger.
Right.
And when those dreams get bigger, then you start looking for tools that allow you to do bigger things.
Yes.
You use a different tool for planting a flower in your flower bed than the ones you use for putting a tree in your yard.
Right. That's right.
Right? You got to get bigger, better tools to do that work.
Mhm.
But the first thing, you got to start with a plan. You got to have a plan.
And it's never too late.
Right?
And-
Never
and-
too late.
And if you think that it is, just, get in touch with me. Because I'm 70 years old and I just made a new plan, and I'm going to check to see whether or not we're going to move forward with this by taking a second visit to a country that my wife and son mentioned that they would like to purchase a place that we could stay for 9-10 months out of the year. So the plan now is that this year, inshallah, we're going to go back to this island, and we're going to confirm that within this 5-year plan that I've already started working towards, that this is in fact what we want to do. And if we are still around in the next 5 years, I'll still be on this call, but I won't be in the USA.
You'll be in a
Unless
different
you catch
time
me-
zone.
Unless you catch me in those 2 to 3 months that I plan on being back here in America. And you're right. You're right about the analogy that you use relative to using a hand spade when I'm planting flowers, as opposed to using a shovel, maybe even a backhoe when I'm
Right.
getting ready to plant a tree,
Right.
depending on the size of it. So this, and what I want to say to those of us that are here, I'm telling you, this is valuable information that typically people pay for. What we're getting right now for free, we better value it. Because when the rubber hits the road and you get out there and start to look at the people who can offer you this professional advice, this is stuff that you're going to have to pay for. You know, and I can't think of who this woman is, but she's got this song that she sings, and she said, and there's a line in it where she says, I don't know all the answers, but the questions just keep getting better. So, and I think that's where, you know, we are now. We're all of us, including myself, we are out there searching, but what we are offering you here is the opportunity to know what it is you want to ask. See, because we don't get a chance to talk about this. You know, so I mean, I appreciate Graceline. I appreciate those of you that are hanging in there with us, and that you give serious consideration not only to coming back, but to bring someone with you when you do come. Because this information cannot die with us. It needs to be passed on to others.
And in closing, I want to say, write your questions down. If you don't feel confident enough to ask a question verbally, you can always put your questions in the chat. Because I would love to see more questions from participants, because I know you have to have them.
Mm-hmm.
I
Or go to our
present,
website to the contact page and send us
yeah,
something.
and put them in there.
Yeah.
I presented today, and I have questions. I have additional questions. I learned something today. So I know you got to have questions. So write those questions down if you know you're going to be a participant, and we'll do the best job that we can of getting you some answers or sending you in the right direction to get those answers.
Okay. Well, unless there is anything else, we have been 3 hours on this. You know, and I think that's sufficient. Some of us may have reached overload an hour ago.
And for everybody that stuck with us, though, thank you guys very much.
Yeah.
Been a pleasure having you with us this morning and now afternoon.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if there's nothing else, go enjoy the rest of your day.
Right. Right.
Thank you.
Sid.
Y'all have a good weekend.
Thank you, Tommy.
Yep. Yep. All right.